Hey everyone, it's Stacey Luces. Welcome to a new episode of Beyond the Quo. We are right in the middle of the beginning of what is considered the holiday season here in the US. And one of the things I was thinking about as I'm looking at not only my calendar, work, and personal calendar is that at this time of the year, everything just feels a little bit louder. There's more get-togethers, both socially and professionally. There are things for the kids as we're all trying to get through, for those of us with children, any last-minute doctor's appointments. It's a time when we relook at our goals for the year. Some of them make us a little bit sad, but a lot of checking in is happening right now as we enter this sort of sprint into getting ready for like the new year, right? Your inbox, your calendar, and for some of us, that inner critic, if we're not where we thought we would be, all of these things come into play during this kind of beginning or entry into the fourth quarter. And if you're wrapping up projects, if you are navigating family matters, some of us are going through periods where it's been a tough season, whether it's grief or loss, or for those of us in areas that have experienced disasters. Maybe managing still disappointments and holdover things from last year that didn't go quite as planned. We are leading, giving, producing, and deep down, some of us, most of you I know, are running on fumes. And it's not just happenstance or hearsay, right? Like every leader I talk to right now is going through something. And it may look tiny to some people what that person is going through in comparison to what they're going through, but this really isn't a race for who's more miserable. It really is a period where we have to go back to some of that inner core values work that we've talked about, some of those boundary setting that we've talked about, some of those, am I right sizing my emotions and my decision making around whatever's happening in the world, right? Or in my own internal world, which sometimes is even more important and compelling and chaotic than what's happening on the outside. So today, we're going to talk about some simple and powerful tools. And a word I want you to think about is discernment. It is honestly one of my favorite words over these past few years. Discernment is kind of one of those leadership or personal power, superpower skills, right? Having discernment means that you are able to make the best decisions using your judgment. And why does that even matter? I'm sure you're like, well, Stacey, I make good decisions all day. I have good judgment. Do we? Do you? Because sometimes when the world is loud and you have this feeling of hecticness inside of you, I would challenge that assumption that you're making good decisions. Some of those decisions may be hasty. Some of them may actually be good. Yes, I'll give you that. But when you reclaim the ability to go quiet, to go still, you reclaim one of the most powerful leadership skills. It is your ability to judge well. And against sort of this backdrop of, I'm using the holiday season, but against this backdrop of everything that's going on in the economy, with friends and family, with the holiday season coming up, a lot of people are feeling a financial tension that they haven't felt in a long time. A lot of people are experiencing just emotional dissonance, this cognitive dissonance between some of the things happening and some of the ways that we feel on the inside and then what we can and can't say. And so I want to challenge us to really have this concept of how do I power up and refuel my ability to have discernment over not only my life, but the people that I work with, my customers, if you own a business or you lead divisions, my staff. If you're a founder or a nonprofit, we're going into that holiday gift giving season where you're feeling that pressure. And so we're going to start kind of this conversation today with understanding the noise that you're under. And I'm going to give you a few tips for that. But also I'm going to give you some strategies, right? Some 2mm shifts that take you from this feeling of maybe overwhelm or decisions that you may or may not are second guessing into this ability to have discernment, to have neutrality in some cases around big decisions. I'm not saying you need to have discernment around should I wear brown or black shoes? Right? These are for the big, heavy, consequential things happening right now. So let's just talk about noise. So noise isn't only a sound, right? Noise isn't just something that happens when you're at a concert. Noise is and can be a lot of unfiltered opinions, a lot of shoulds when you're scrolling through social media. And thoughts come into your mind about, well, I should be further along, or I should be doing that, or why is that person doing that? So without input and insight into why that's happening, you're filtering it in an uneven frequency. And when your mind itself is busy, hectic, cluttered, your ability to judge well, discern, and decide when and how much of your energy to exert goes out the window. And you get sloppy. And for some of us that are managing big portfolios, other people's portfolios, maybe some of us are crisis managers. A lot of the people that I are in my circle right now are responding to things, real life tragedies happening in the world. And that ability to ground yourself, maintain neutrality, even while witnessing and bearing witness and sometimes even feeling suffering in your own soul, but still having to execute well without burnout is mandatory. So a couple of things that you can't access when you are in this frenetic state. And again, outwardly, some of us are looking fine, right? Outwardly, a lot of the leaders I'm coaching look great, but inwardly, there's almost this turmoil. And it's this almost inability, you guys, to like trust your intuition, that tiny voice that becomes louder the more you tune into it. But when you are in reaction mode, you lose that signal. And you can't lead with clarity, and your nervous system, that fight or flight response, that adrenaline, I'll just power through, kicks in. And for some of you, that has been actually the case for maybe years. And that is a slow, steady burnout that a lot of us don't talk about. We certainly do here on this podcast, but it does have an impact on us. So I want to give you a statistic that kind of shocked me because it was super high. But according to a 2024 Deloitte study, this was literally last year, 70% of professionals say they feel most mentally exhausted in the final quarter of the year, even when they take time off. So yeah, a lot of us are planning our Thanksgiving getaway, our Christmas, New Year's, all of the big holidays are coming up. But it means a lot of us also are entering into the next season on autopilot. We are performing. We got to get through the holiday parties, if we're hosting, all of those things, and not perceiving, is this within not only my best interest, but my family's best interest, right? And so the danger in that, and I use that word deliberately, right? I mean, it doesn't always have to be a wolf with fangs at the door, right? But the danger in that is when your mind is noisy and your decision making is emotional and impulsive or defensive. I will say that again. When your mind is noisy and your decision making is emotional, impulsive, and defensive, you are chasing urgency instead of alignment. And you start mistaking other people's expectations for your own values. Or worse yet, when you don't know what your own values are and you have high expectations of people that may or may not be in alignment with what they are about, and you become disappointed, angry, frustrated, and lash out, that's when you lose command of your own personal power. That's when you start flying off the handle. That's when you become overly sensitive. That's when, quite frankly, sometimes nobody wants to be around you. And we've all experienced those seasons, and sometimes, yes, it is warranted. But if you are consistently showing that as a pattern, that is not the best leadership game. That's not the best way to show up and to gain trust and credibility with the people around you, right? So that, what we just talked about for the past, 2 minutes or so, was this concept of what is noise, how does noise impact you, and what some of the consequences of noise is. The other side of that coin is stillness. Uh, yeah, for a lot of us, so I will say that 90% of the leaders that come into my coaching container do not ever meditate. They do not ever take the time to journal. They do not ever take the time to sit quietly with themselves in this practice that clears any mental and emotional dirt, if you will, noise, if you will, so they can actually see what's in front of them. 90% of them think that they are making great decisions. There's another statistic, which, I'm probably going to mess this one up, but whatever, you can fact check it on your own and, have a pat yourself on the back about it. They say that on a given day, a human makes about 30,000 decisions. Big, small, autopilot, whatever. Leaders, it's a little bit more. And for most leaders, they make about 300 big decisions a day. So out of the 30,000, kind of some of them autopilot or whatever, leadership, C-suite, think kind of that caliber, make about 300 decisions a day. And out of those, a lot of them have further reaching consequences, right? Trickle down effects. And by, I think, 2 p.m., if you are not doing and having certain strategies to keep you mentally acute, you're making some shifty, exhausted, distracted decisions. And that is definitely sobering. So I want you to think about for a second, right? Every great leader, creator, visionary that we admire has some sort of ritual of stillness. Really, all of them. Oprah has quiet time. LeBron had mental reset days. Steve Jobs used to do silent walks before making major calls. And when I say calls, I don't mean phone calls. I mean, maybe some of them were phone calls. But before big decisions, these icons took time out. They got quiet. And what does that do, right? Well, clarity doesn't come from chaos. It comes from stillness. And for me, I would say personally, learning that technique and I'm always honest with you guys about my shortcomings or boomerang with some of the habits I want to instill and the fact that it takes constant and consistent work, but it's never going back to zero. It's always, hey, I did really well, dropped off for a few weeks, let me get back. Never starting from zero, but just take the stack back, right? So for me, stillness, for the most part, is my early morning ritual. And sometimes it's a meditation, literally 8 minutes, you guys, sometimes even 5. But most of the times it's just a walk with my dog. Ironically, his name is, well, there's nothing ironic about it. He has a funny name. His name's Luke Skywalker. I don't even know why, but he and I go for a walk. And in that 45 minute, couple of miles, I'm able to do a few things. I'm able to sometimes get out of my head. I'm able to breathe because there's a bit of exertion. I'm able to, we live in Florida, so really feel the sun or watch the sunrise. We leave pretty early, maybe like 6 a.m. and watch the morning, watch the world kind of start taking shape. And I really love that ritual because for some people it's the gym, but for me, I like a quieter, more introspective beginning to my day. And again, this goes back to some of the work a lot of leaders and adults have to do is figure out what works for you. And what works for you does not and may not work for somebody else. And so finding the way that you move in the world and the rhythm that you have and what you respond to is super imperative. And for me, nature is a big part of what moves me. I grew up on an island. And so that being in nature is super, brings out an introspective side to me, and quiet quieten. Is that a word? Quiets down? Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. For some people, it's journaling. I will tell you, sometimes I journal, but it's not a habit. Yet I have friends that journal quite extensively, and it is so cathartic for them. And what I love about that habit of journaling is that you can timestamp a year from now what a year last year looked like. Where were you? That's why I kind of sort of like, sometimes Facebook memories or things you've written pop up and they're like, oh, here's where you were a year ago, whatever. I love seeing that growth because sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for that, right? For some people, it's sitting with a cup of coffee or a newspaper, no agenda, no notifications or anything like that. And the funny thing is, not funny, ha, is that some of your best ideas are going to come out of that. Some of the things that you should have been paying attention to, but the noise in your head or around you is kind of camouflaging that. When you're in that grind, and that dust settles, you're able to ground yourself and really, really have a different experience. So when we first started, so we've talked about what noise is. We've talked a little bit about what quiet or stillness does for you. I want to talk to you about that favorite word. When I started, I said discernment. Listen, ice cream is also a favorite word, but let's just stick with discernment for now. So what is discernment? So the formal definition, if you will, for discernment is the ability to judge well. The ability to judge well. And this is if you want to think of it as your intuition or your internal compass. And think about when your mind is cluttered and how that compass or that inner network that gives you all of the information that you need, whether it's intuition, your emotional response to a decision, your head space, right? A lot of times you may be saying yes to something when your body is signaling no. Whether it's the warmth of your cheek, you can't see me. I'm like, did I pinch my own cheeks just now? I kind of did. Anyway, and so really not being in tune with all the parts of you that actually come together to help you make a decision that not only feels good and is good, but you're more likely to be successful at because you're aligned with it. That's when you start trusting yourself. And so it's less so about seeking validation and it's more so about using your internal wisdom, using that discernment, that ability to judge well, to ground you and then go forth very confidently. Last year, I was speaking at a major event and it was kind of a late afternoon into the evening event. And we flowed into sort of a happy hour and it was around late November. So it wasn't necessarily a holiday party, but it was definitely, everybody had that kind of vibe, right? That festive going into the last month of the year. And people asked me, what were my goals for the next year? I don't know. I had to kind of pause for that. And I said, I wish I didn't have any goals. Like that was, my goal was not to have any goals next year. And everybody kind of, paused a little bit and there was some laughter because we all want to have those goals because they make us whatever. And what surprised me though was after that event, in the days that followed, I got a lot of engagement on that, whether it was texts or emails, just people saying, that really stayed with me in the sense of goals drive a lot of what we do. But they also, some of them are so driven by the need for external validation that they don't feel like ours. And the 3 pillars, if you will, for this podcast revolve around redefining success on your own terms, living your authentic truth, and leading courageously. And if any of those 3 things are out of alignment, the other 2 are in a little bit of conflict with that. And it's never going to be seamless, and it's never going to be easy, and it's never going to be easily navigated like that. But definitely, I was surprised by how many people wish they didn't have goals. And here's the thing, you can do that. You know? Right. So, stillness as a strategy. You know, I love strategy. In my past life, I did strategic planning for federal agencies, Pentagon, Homeland Security. I was at FEMA, Office of Management, and doing strategy at that level is really intricate. And you have to have discernment because there are so many competing agendas, so many competing, things that are urgent and compelling. And the ability for leaders to come together and have someone facilitate them through picking what their top objectives, strategic priorities are for the year, or sometimes 5 years out, whatever. I had to be, and my team, we had to be clear. We had to be neutral. We had to give them the tools to be able to make those decisions with the best outcomes that we could, guess, honestly. But what was even more important was that they were able, and we usually took them offsite. And what was even more important was that in the quiet of not having to respond to day-to-day burning platforms, they were able to hear each other. They were able to take notes. They were able to have breakfast together. They were able to have discernment around what was noise and what were actually strategies that was, in some cases, going to move the country forward. And so the ability for us as leaders to have those moments, even in our personal lives, which, of course, your personal life and the way that you move in the world and the type of person that you are, for some of us, the type of shit you post on social media, are you having discernment around how that impacts not only you, your brand, your image, your communities? Because our voice, we see this cancel culture all the time, but our voice isn't our own to some extent anymore. And having discernment, am I saying the right thing? Do I have all the information? Like, that's still super important, right? As leaders, when we have people's futures in our hands, some of us. And so stillness in this case as a leadership strategy doesn't mean stepping back. It just means stepping forward, but with intention and clarity and groundedness. A 2023 Harvard Business Review report found that leaders who practice internal reflection are 23% more effective in decision-making and 40% less likely to experience burnout. Those are big. That's almost half less likely to experience chronic burnout, and then almost a quarter who are making poor decisions if they don't have that clarity and that stillness. So this isn't soft stuff, right? This is really tools, sharp tools to get you functioning better. Here's how you can build this into your rhythm, right? Stillness as a strategy, if you will. 1, start your day quietly. For a lot of us, we start our day and the first thing we do is roll over and pick up the phone. Let me check my email. Let me check who texted me. Oh my God. My hubby works for a hospital and it's a 24-hour operation. He's in the IT part of that organization, and it's nonstop. But what I admire about him is he will get up and start his day, and then go do that. Me, when I was in corporate, when I worked for Homeland Security, I literally would roll over, my eyes would pop open, and I would grab my phone. And so starting your day quietly, no phone maybe for the first 20 minutes, and asking yourself what really matters today is important. Another strategy is to build micro boundaries. Now, what does that even mean? You don't need to justify every no. You can protect your energy because guess what? Your energy determines your ROI. Your energy determines the return on investment. Because how you show up for meetings, how you show up for a client, how you show up for a partner, how you show up for your business, how you show up on social media, how I show up for this podcast matters. My energy matters, right? And so if I don't have these micro boundaries in, hey, or you don't, that has an impact, right? Another one is to schedule white space. We call it, some people call it time blocking. Some people call it deep think time. I know is it Don Miller? He's the guy that has the storyboard, like that framework with the hero's journey and all of that stuff. I love that he said when he's writing a book, he has so many things that he could be doing, but he carves out, I think it's 4 hours every morning to write. And he hunkers down, I don't know if it's his basement or whatever, and it's no calls, it's no distractions. And at first people were like, dude, what are you doing? We have this multi-million-dollar business that's running. You've got all of these things that you have to do. We can't afford to lose you for 4 hours a day for writing. And he's like, these books and these strategies come from this, like the fuel for the company, for the thing that we're selling, for the thing that moves leaders and gets them to come to us, comes from this writing. So if we don't have that, what are we doing? And so I think building in that white space for what's important to you is a form of discernment that is super powerful. And it's the pause between every input, right? So stillness, make no mistake, sharpens your edge. It refines your judgment. And it really makes you magnetic for the right opportunities, because you're no longer acting from noise. You're acting from inner purpose and alignment, from knowing, right? Trusting your judgment. So I want to give you some reflection prompts, keeping this episode a little bit more shorter today, because this is a lot of dense information. So go re-listen to it again. But here are some reflection prompts. Hopefully you have a pen. If not, pause me and come back. As we head into the last weeks of this year, I want you to ask yourself 5 questions. And I don't want you to just ask yourself these questions haphazardly. I want you to really sit and think about it, right? So one of the questions is, what's the loudest noise in my life right now, and who does it serve? What's the loudest noise in my life right now, and who does it serve? Sometimes I will give you a perfect example. It's probably not a popular opinion, but definitely, you know, that 80-20 rule. There was a time period where a leadership strategy was focusing, hyper-focusing, rewarding, accolading, giving big projects to the top 20% of your performers. And the bottom 10%, which a lot of leaders spend most of their time trying to coach, lead, influence, you know, recognize, reward, drag some sort of brilliant performance from this 10% at the bottom of the performance food chain, kind of just ignore them. And people are like, what? But I'm spending money on them. I'm wasting money on them if I don't focus on them. I would argue that they're making the loudest noise. And who is it serving when you are focused on this percentage of your workforce and not the percentage that's actually bringing you more clients, more visibility, more access, quite frankly, sometimes more joy? So that was just an example. Like, what's the loudest noise in your life right now, and who is it serving? So figure that out, right? So question 2, where am I mistaking urgency for importance? Where am I mistaking urgency for importance? That's super compelling. Sometimes, you know, it's urgent that I get my car aligned, my tires aligned in my head, and my heart is, I feel a little anxious about it. But in the grand scheme of things, yes, it's important, but is it urgent right now? That's probably a bad example, but I just want to give you room in your life to think about these things, right? Maybe that when I was when my kids were super younger, they would have these bake sales. This is probably a bad example, but all these moms would bring these homemade I was busy, so honestly, I would just like brownies and put them in like a plastic container and roll up with it. They didn't know better, but I felt guilt about that. And so a sense something important was showing up for the bake sale, but I used to feel urgent and like stressed out and want to get up at like 5 a.m. to bake fresh brownies from scratch. Like who the hell would even know? You know what I mean? So mistaking urgency for importance is another one. Another fake sense of urgency is when other people are maybe delayed or procrastinated or maybe are in a bad state from decisions that they made. So now they want to call you for you to help them out of their ditch. And so all of your important work goes to the side. And I want to say have a lot of discernment around that because people will take from you what they need at any given point in time. So your urgent and compelling drama doesn't necessarily have to be mine. And that is the hardest pill for a lot of us as leaders to swallow. Number 3, what happens to my judgment when my mind is cluttered? What happens to my judgment when my mind is cluttered? I will say when my mind is cluttered, and it's mostly when there's competing things for the roles in my life. So whether that is maybe I'm planning a birthday party or something or a family event. Maybe the kids need me in a way that sometimes it's a nice tempo and it's predictable. And then sometimes stuff goes out the window and it's like, oh my God, what's happening? Maybe there's repairs to happen at the house. Maybe it's suddenly all of the meetings and all of the partnership strategy sessions that people were like, oh, we don't have time right now. Suddenly everybody wants to get them done and I have to schedule them back to back. That is when my mind is cluttered. And that is when I am probably more hasty in my decisions because I just want to get it done. I am shorter in my responses to people because now I feel like, oh my God, it's a burden on my time to hear you out, get to the point. And so I become a hasty version of myself, right? I go into my heavy masculine energy and I can be abrupt and dismissive. So you have to know these cues and these patterns in yourself so that you can check it. And you can take the time and do the things that you need to do so that you're not a complete asshole to people, right? Number 4, what does stillness look like for you? Not ideally. My stillness could be a spa, right? Living in the mountains. But realistically, so for me, I mentioned my morning walk is my period. So figure out what that means for you. And a lot of times, if you build those things around things you naturally like to do anyway, it actually makes complete sense, right? Because you're not thinking of it as another thing to do. It's actually some form of enjoyment that you're building capacity around it, right? And 5th, and this is the one that really at the crux of my coaching program, this is where people have the most transformation. And it's what truth has been kind of niggling at you, that little, it's like an itch you can't quite scratch or a whisper that keeps getting louder. Like, what's the thing? And for a lot of us in midlife, it really is this it? Is this my legacy? What am I doing this for? What is the purpose of this? Is this all I'm going to be doing for the next 20 years? For a lot of us in our 40s and 50s, right? So what's the truth that's trying to come out at you, through you, that you are nervous about, anxious about, ignoring? And a lot of it is this feeling that if I listen to that voice, there's going to be something bad happening, whether it's I will lose something. For a lot of people, if you're caught up in the success as an identity and titles as an identity, it's, oh my God, what if I have to leave this big job and then nobody knows me? Or I've worked so hard, I'm at this particular stature, I'm miserable, but it's all I know. It's what I work for. Like, what happens? And so understanding what your version of that is, and I've talked about these in many different episodes. A big one for a lot of people is that they've run up the ladder so singularly focused that they get to the top and it's really lonely up there. You don't have a support system. If you are a parent and you've got adult kids or even younger kids, there's no relationship with you. If you have a partner, you're probably functioning as roommates. And so that really, and for a lot of people, health is the biggest one, in that the truth is I am not a healthy version of myself. I am not building muscle for longevity. So it's a short game, because you're going to develop some kind of crazy chronic illness and tap out, right? So these are reflections, right? This isn't a quiz where you go take it and score yourself, but really, as we go into this final quarter, as we go into this final season, understanding this recalibration process and doing it in a way that's more strategic, but also that allows you to have more discernment. And going back to my little anecdote about better goals, maybe they help you reframe some of the potential maybe disappointments you thought you were going to have going into this end of year if things didn't go the way you planned. But it can set you up for maybe smarter goals, smarter adjustments going into that new year, right? So I'm going to kind of wrap this up for you. We talked a lot. Today was a bit of a strategic but also complex conversation. And so I want to leave you with this notion that stillness is not the absence of motion. It's not stagnation. It really is a form of personal power. It's mastering your energy, mastering your thought process, mastering your decision making. And that is a superpower that all of us invariably need. And so learning how to do these things protects your judgment, your peace of mind, and your ROI, your effectiveness in whatever it is you choose to do, whether that's in your personal goals or your professional goals. So as the noise of the holidays ramps up, I want you to remember this. You don't have to keep anyone else's pace. And you don't have to prove your worth through exhaustion. And the most effective leaders in the world still are not the loudest. They're the most aligned. There are those quiet storms that get things done. So I'm going to issue you a little challenge. I love to do these because I invariably get a ton of emails and texts. For the next 7 days, before you react to anything, whether it's a text, a meeting, a request, a party invitation, I want you to pause for a couple of minutes. No scrolling, no fixing, no people pleasing, no noise, right? Get really still if it's a big, if you feel yourself coming up on a big reaction. And I want you to practice some of these strategies, right? And if this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to share it with someone that you think is still living in a lot of noise and maybe needs to kind of, you want to cut through that noise and have them focus on something. And I want to say that my wish for all of us in this community, by the way, guys, this is my 50th episode. I cannot believe it. I can't believe I've sat here in this chair, well, more times, but this is officially the 50th recording. And when I first started this last year, I didn't know if I would like this. I didn't know if podcasting was for me, but I committed to it for a year. I committed to showing up for a year, showing up. And at some point during this year, I started to do solo episodes. And a big part of it was a challenge to myself to not have and not only depend on guests, but sort of share with you some of that thought leadership and some of those strategies that my clients, when they work with me in Container, get, but also allow you to sort of sit with me and get to know me and get the benefit of some of that executive coaching and that leadership strategies so that you are showing up not only for yourself and your family and your circle, but in your communities, bigger, brighter, stronger, braver, right? And so during the course of the 50 episodes, not only have I gotten sharper, but my confidence has also grown in expressing into a community of people that a lot of whom I probably will never meet in person, things that I hope will help them. And there's still a bit of, imposter syndrome, really, because the tendency is to compare yourself to podcasts that you open Instagram and boom, there's a reel of like Mel Robbins or whomever. But really, your vibe attracts your tribe. And I have no doubt, just given the feedback that I've been getting, that this resonates and lands with you. So my wish for all of us in 2026 is that we use some of what you've learned this year, anchored, not anxious, strategic, having discernment, understanding your core values and how to have boundaries. And if you want to learn more about my coaching programs and workshops that I do, check me out on YouTube, Beyond the Quo, or Instagram, Stacey Luces, on LinkedIn, and let's chat about that. But in the meantime, go back and listen to this episode and get grounded and move into 2026, not in status quo, but beyond the quo. Catch you next week. Thanks.